Darkrai is the 8th raid of the PokeMMO 2020-25 Halloween event. It was pretty expected. We have 2 difficulties. We're going to be talking mostly about the hard mode difficulty. But let's talk about a little bit. First thing is rewards. I'll get into really quickly. If you beat the 4-star raid, you get the Darkrai Summoning Orb. You do not get a second one. So if you already have the Darkrai Summoning Orb, you do not get another one. Everyone receives the red Lotus Crown. You can see me wearing it here. And then if you beat the hard mode, you get 10 Dream Essences every time you complete it. And then the first time you complete it, you get the Tentacle Vanity. It's a back vanity. It's very cool. You'll see it at the end of the video. To get to the New Moon Island where Darkrai raids are located, you need to have first beaten all of the raids of the Halloween event. The strange chunks that you have received for beating each raid will assemble themselves into the Dream Orb, which you can use that will teleport you to the island. Going over the Darkrai 4-star strat quickly, it's a very straightforward. It's a pretty easy raid, if I'm being honest. It does require 2 OT Pokemon now, so that's a wrinkle, but ultimately, you're just going to want to lead with something that will wake up from sleep or will resist sleep. So the obvious choice that most people go with is Vital Spirit Primate. It will not be affected by sleep. You can also just use something that hits decently hard and wakes up from the Chesto Berry or Lumberry that you give it. The rest of the time, you're just going to be clicking close combat until around turn 5. There is the type inversion somewhere in the middle. So you're going to want to switch to Psychic type. So if you have Gallade or Medicham, you can click Psycho Cut and do super effective damage late. But ultimately, it's just fighting spam with a little bit of Psychic late. So pretty easy raid. We're going to talk about the 5-star mostly in this video. And for mechanics, these are for the 5-star raid. There is some overlap for the 4-star raid. It gets super complex for the 5-star, so we're just going to focus on those. If you want more information on the 4-star raid, you can check out the link to the document in the description, where there'll be a little bit more in depth, so you can kind of a little bit more to chew on if you need it. But otherwise, we're going to lead with a Dark Void. If you're not aware, that's just an AoE sleep. So that's why we like those Vital Spirit Primates. They're going to stay awake, hit damage cap. They used to last year not hit damage cap with Choice Band. They do hit damage cap now. I think Darkrai's defenses were nerfed slightly into this year. We got the Nasty Plot at 70%. We're going to largely ignore. At 51%, this is important. Alternating turn type inversion. So on the 4th turn, after we've hit 50%, so that usually happens on turn 4. On turn 4, super effective moves become not very effective. Not very effective moves become super effective. So we're going to be using Dark type and Ghost type moves into Darkrai to do super effective damage. It switches again on turn 5, so it goes back to normal. Then on turn 6, goes to inverted, and then turn 7 goes back to the normal if you get there. There is a Dark Void at 33% that usually goes off by the 4th damage dealer of turn 4, so they will need a Lumberry. Basically, all your Pokemon are going to go to sleep, but 3 of them will have already attacked, so you don't care. The 4th one will not have used their attack, so you'll want the Lumberry to go off, or Chesto, if you haven't used that already, to go off, and then they will be able to attack and deal damage. So you may have to tweak that depending on what your exact comp ends up being, but that's the point of consideration. Then finally, there is a physical special switch. The easiest way to wrap your head around this is its psychic move becomes a physical attack move. So instead of it just saying special on it, it becomes physical. So you're going to continue to want to use your Pokemon's main stats, but you'll have to use the opposite type of move. So the recommendation that I give for this is Medicham using Psychic, and an additional one for the 5th turn. We'll get into it shortly, but that's kind of the overview of the mechanics. Let me get into what that ends up looking like for a composition. So looking at this, you can see we have the Tailwind going off turn 1. We're going to have to keep Tailwind up for the whole fight. Darkrai is very speedy. We're going to have the Vital Spirit lead, clicking close combat. You could alternatively do High Jump Kick lead if you really wanted to. You don't need to squeak out that damage anymore. That's kind of a relic of a past era. So really close combat's going to be the recommendation with Chesto or Vital Spirit Primate lead. Then turns 2 and 3 are very straightforward, clicking close combat or Sacred Sword throughout. If you've got, whatever, pretty much every hard hitting close combat Pokemon is going to do damage cap now. Not much to worry about. You'll notice that I don't have a Poison Barb recommendation. I didn't recommend it last year, and I'm definitely not recommending it this year. You can very easily find the damage in any of these turns. It was very useful when all we had were a few raid Pokemon prepared. Now that everyone has much more prepared, you really don't need the added damage from Hex to hit cap on turn 4. You are just sacrificing a lot of damage on turn 3 that you could otherwise be applying to turn 4. It's really not worth it overall, in my opinion. Can you still beat the raid with it? Absolutely. It's not that much of a difference, but as far as I'm going to recommend, I'm going to recommend what I think is better. This I think will be better overall. Turn 4 is where we have the inversion, the type inversion. Shiftry is the hardest hitting Pokemon for this case. So it's going to very easily, with the +1 attack from Wind Rider, hit damage cap. We're going to Sucker Punch, and then that guarantees that one goes first. The other two can be the same speed and click Assurance. Then you want one that's slightly slower, that will have Lumberry. It will still hit damage cap with the Lumberry, clicking Assurance. That one will wake up for the Dark Void that goes off at 35% and then push you down to roughly the 30% range. Turn 5, Tailwind peters out. We will then want to reset Tailwind, and the type inversion has flipped back to normal for this turn. It's not health percentage based, it's only turn based. So we're wanting to click fighting or bug moves theoretically, but fighting is very easy to do. We're wanting to click fighting moves again. So what I recommend is you have we actually in the video that you're going to see, our second close combat actually ended up hitting as a special move. We didn't want to do that initially, but it still didn't matter. So you can maybe do something where you're using a mixed Pokemon, whatever. I would just say go to fast CC Pokemon. It's probably the safest thing. Then the Pokemon that goes last on turn 5 will click a move that is opposite what you would normally expect. So my recommendation for that slot is we used a close combat clicking special Lucario. So it's a modest Lucario, EV trained in special attack and speed. It clicked close combat because close combat is a special move at that point to do the most damage. It might be slightly safer to go with something like a Blaziken or an Infernape. Reason being, if that Pokemon lives an extra turn like ours did, it will be a little bit better for it to click a special fire move, or rather a physical fire move, rather like Flare Blitz, that would then be special for them. Minor optimization, special Lucario works. I think a lot of people have them after Lunar New Year last year, but one person on your team does need that special slot because it will flip to 25% around that point. Then for the final turn, we have Metachams. I'm specifically recommending Metachams in the case that you have something live. Metacham fits the dual role of having both access to Aura Sphere and Psychic. If your Metacham lives to turn 7, like you'll see ours do, it might be beneficial to have that Metacham have Aura Sphere on it. Psychic becomes immune, so we ended up having to click I think close combat, which is a special move for Metacham. It's not accessing its ability for pure power. Not a really optimal move. So Metacham is the best option in my opinion for turn 6, in case it lives to turn 7. Otherwise it's hitting damage cap very easily with Psychic. So getting into the battle here, you'll see specs on Metacham. We fixed that. That's a point of confusion. You still want to boost your attack stat on Metacham. The thing that changes is the move itself. So you want to focus on attack-based stuff. We just went with Twisted Spoon on Metacham there, and I believe it would still hit damage cap anyway. But you'll see the lead here. We have the Chesto Berry on our Tailwinder. We have our Vital Spirit Primates going off, dealing damage cap each. So even with damage cap, you'll be doing a little bit less than 5% sometimes. That's just how the damage cap works occasionally. So that is good for us because we're going to get down to just below where the first inversion might happen. It might not matter based on the new mechanics. It might trigger automatically later. But basically on turn 3, we're going to get down to about 46% here. So we've got Mienshau's, Heracrosses, Gallades, all great options for you. to use for these fighting type turns 1 through 3 and turn 5 potentially. You'll see I flashed the special Lucario that we're going to be using at the end of turn 5. But now a little bit of coordination happening between the link. This is where you need to start figuring stuff out. I really recommend you putting the Pokemon in the correct order so you can just see them in the preview, who's using what in order, and then you remember specifically. So I know that I recommended all shift trees. You don't need to use all shift trees. We have special Hydreigon going first with a Dark Pulse, then then a Shadow Ball, an Assurance, and then the Lumberry goes off for the final Assurance to hit damage cap. So I think that puts us at around just below 30%. And so the first Mon going off will be Tailwind on turn 5. Second's going to actually put it over that special physical split. So the second move isn't going to be doing as much damage as it could. But we're still going to have that close combat deal a decent amount. Sorry for the alerts. Thank you for the raid again, Basil TV. I stream this live, so that final close combat that is actually a special move for the Modest Lucario put us down into the 16% range. And then finally, we will have the Metachams go. You'll see that the Lucarios and Murkrow both lived. If you think I don't know exactly how this worked out. Maybe it's just the 2 ads, but it's much simpler if your Pokemon live. This is where we ran into the problem with the Metachams not having Aura Sphere, but we did have enough damage just from the special close combats doing roughly 2% each to put us over the line here for the Darkrai kill. So you'll see that the flashed quickly, but close combat is actually a special move in this case. We're clicking it anyway to do damage. We have no other option given that Psychics are immune at this point on turn 7. So yeah, that's the raid. It's I think a bit easier this year without the particular percentages tripping things up, where if you just were a 10th of a percent off, it would mess you up. And there we go. Look at the tentacles. They're wiggling. We're at 4 times speed. They are limited to this event, but they dropped in price quite precipitously. I sold mine for 4 mil. They're down to about 1 mil. Speculate on the price as you will. Otherwise, good luck. I think it's pretty straightforward this year. You should be able to get it. And if there are requests, I can put out a 4-star guide. Otherwise, I'll just link to the timestamp where I beat the raid in my live stream for people in the raid document linked below. Otherwise, here's the comp again for you to look at, and good luck. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm available on Discord. Comment on the YouTube video. I try to answer that as frequently as possible. Yeah, whatever. Hit me up, and good luck.